Hello to myself and everybody else. So far, this is another book review, and this book review will be on Comickers Art. This is the first book. So far, this is the first Comickers Art book as far as I know of, and it was made in 2007 in Japan and published in America in 2008. So far, the contents of this book basically shows that it's made up of 4 categories, such as artists and traditional tools. Then later it will go on to gallery, hot new talent, then story manga, and then it'll go to the master artist gallery. So far, each category is broken down into different topics, with the first one basically having topics such as selecting drawing material and tools, key painting tools and material, mastering the use of water, overlay colors, color gradation, brushes, and paper. Then it goes over other topics with markers, colored inks, transparent watercolors, acrylic paint, and computer graphics, with each one of them basically showing examples from an artist, which I'll basically go over the name once I get to it, but basically just shows that. Except for the computer graphics one, this one is mostly interviews with 3 different people. It doesn't really show examples, it just goes over their interview. Then with the gallery, it basically just has a bunch of pictures from a bunch of random artists. The story manga, it shows manga that was made specifically for this magazine, so just little things of that. With this book, even though it's written in English, the comics are still in Japanese, so I can't really read them. And the gallery master artist basically just shows pictures from artists that I assume have been working in the industry for a while, so again, pretty decent amount of stuff covered in this first issue of the book. So far, we take a closer look at selecting drawing materials and tools. Basically, it talks about criteria for material and tool selection, such as water resistance, transparency, using a computer, reasonable prices, color sharpness, and thick coats, in which each topic basically just goes into advice on why you probably should focus on these topics when you're selecting material for drawing something. It also has a Q&A about choosing painting material and basically saying stuff like why you should not go for something really expensive, or what tools and materials should I have, or how should I take care of my painting tools, and also what kind of tools and material do professionals use. It also goes into key painting tools and materials, which basically shows a bunch of examples of different materials that can be used. Each of the pictures, they'll show what can be used, and it even has the name of the specific thing in the picture. So if you want to go look it up or want to try it, you can also just do research and find that as well. It has a lot of different examples that could be useful for somebody starting out, specifically in painting. It goes over mastering the use of water, and basically saying when you're using water with your pictures, such as understanding the characteristics of paint, so knowing what paint goes good with what water, what paper, which also talks about understanding the characteristics of paper, stretching watercolor paper, various different tips and advice for using a lot of different paints and what to look out for. Same thing with watercolor pencils and paint several times. Just a lot of stuff on paint that, again, if you're going into painting, it gives pretty good advice for that. It has a lot of information on. So that's something again, to check out as well with this. And the next page continues that with talking about more about overlaying colors, color gradation, brushes, and even lists off the different kinds of brushes that are available. And paper as well, listing different kind of brands and showing how they look and why you'll probably use them. So again, a lot of information that if anybody who's starting out with painting, again, you may really want to check this book out because it talks a lot about painting. So far, continuing on, it talks about markers, and it talks about things such as what is a marker, characteristics of markers, marker techniques. It even shows different kind of markers as well you can use and different kind of brands. So if you see anything on the page you're interested in, you can also look it up and give it a shot. And it even talks about pointers and stuff in using markers, specifically such as if you're using paint and markers, what should you do and what should you not do. With that, the next page basically goes into showing an example of using markers And basically this whole section of the book is basically showing the work of, and I'm going to try my best on pronouncing this correctly, Saya Iwasaki. And basically these pages go over, like, it shows the rough drawing, and then basically shows what they do with markers and how they color parts of it in, such as the first part showing how they start with the skin and basically starting with a darker color for the outside edge of the skin and then work their way in to make it lighter. And then it goes into what they do with hair, such as starting with a certain color and then starting to blend their way in to basically show light from the darkness using shadows and everything. Again, basically just goes through the whole process of them just using markers, showing what they would do to, like, get this image drawn. The only thing, if I have to say, is with this book, it doesn't necessarily show, like, everything all the way through. Because basically it'll show, like, again, just key things you should know. Then, like, another part shows, like, drawing the pupils and, like, coloring that in. But basically, when it comes down to, like, the entire image, like, in the beginning, you can see the whole image colored in. But with the steps, you only get kind of just a few points of it, such as the skin, the eyes, the hair, and then maybe, like, little things for detail. Again, mostly just for, like, putting in, like, light or shine to something. You don't get to see, like, the entire thing colored in. It's kind of, like, pretty quick. It's about, like, 19 steps. But something that does come in handy, though, is that it does show, like, the colors used, and it also shows what Saya Iwasaki's desk looks like when they're drawing this as well. And just basically recommends just trying different markers and just see what you like and what you can get. The next part goes into using colored inks, which again covers the same kind of similar topics to the markers, which is what is colored ink, characteristics of colored ink techniques, points for applying colored ink, and it even shows different kind of inks you can look into and give, different tries as well. The main thing really to point out with this is that, like, again, it basically talks about how you should store ink, and if you're using ink with paint or with water, like, what to look out for. So it gives you a little advice for that as well. The next part goes into how to use colored inks with water and paper. It basically uses the artist Hiroki Mafuyo as a person to just kind of show how you can utilize ink, water, and paper to make an image. It goes into their picture scroll series called Space Orion. And so far this part basically shows how they get their sketch and the paper ready, how they basically add, like, yellow to the page, how they apply their colors, how they paint detail. And it basically just goes through the entire process of just showing, like, how they made these images for their scroll series. And it does show a lot of detail and stuff as well, like a lot of pages going into the motif. And even at the end it shows, like, what tools were used to make this. So if you're really interested in using ink with water and paint, then this is absolutely very interesting to look at as well. Gives a lot of advice, goes into detail and stuff. So again, you could definitely get inspiration from this. The next part shows transparent watercolors, which does the same thing as the other stuff, and talks about what is transparent watercolors, characteristics of transparent watercolor techniques, and transparent versus opaque, as well as it gives, like, some material you can look into as well. So again, very interesting stuff. And then the next part of the book again shows an example of how to use watercolor paints. This time they're using the artist Yumi Kasai, and it basically just shows how they basically prepare their image with a rough sketch, their basic painting method, and it basically goes through the process of them getting started, showing the face, or painting the face rather, painting the hair, also how they did stuff with, like, lace patterns and the clothes, the fabric. Goes into just a lot of detail and stuff like that too, in steps, just showing, like, what did they do to basically prepare this. Even at the end it shows their material used for this as well to make this image. And it even has an interview with them where they basically talk about things such as why does Ayumi kind of use the paints that they do, as well as, like, basically their method and ideology behind using these different kind of colors and paints as well to make their images. So again, very interesting read. I'm just going to be saying that about a lot of stuff. Again, it is very interesting just to learn all this stuff about these different artists and different people as well, and also how to use these different kind of materials. The next part is on acrylic paints, and yep, it covers the same thing as the other ones, which is what is acrylic paint, characteristics of acrylic paint, acrylic paint techniques and pointers for using acrylic paint. And it also shows different kind of acrylic paints that you can use as well. So just things you can look into and just experiment with. So far, the next page basically shows examples of using acrylic paint by basically using the artist Hamlet Okinawa, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, to basically just walk through their process of making a picture. And so far, again, it basically starts with a background sketch, and then it goes into various stuff like painting the skin, painting the eyes, using thick coatings, breaking down, painting the skin, painting the eyes and hair, overlaying colors, and even the completion of the picture. So far, again, just same as the others, it basically just shows the process of them using acrylic paints to make the entire picture. And again, it's a pretty good way to get advice for using acrylic paints or to help with like the work process of making stuff. So again, it's a pretty good read if you're working with that or want to start working with acrylic paints. And so far, the other part is on computer graphics, which talks about what are computer graphics, characteristics of computer graphics, techniques of computer graphics, and risk of using computer graphics, and also points out material here as well. Again, remember this book is from 2007 through 2008, so some of the stuff in here might be a bit outdated a little bit, such as saying use stuff like Painter or Adobe Photoshop, which again, now there's like a lot of sources and other things to use. But the things that it does talk about, which are still relevant now, is that like getting a setup can be expensive and things like that. So again, basically with this, it's something to glance at, but again, because it being kind of outdated, just take kind of the information with a grain of salt. That's kind of the main thing about this. And so far, the next part of the book is a three-way interview between the editor, and so far I'm just going to have their names up here on the screen for the page because I really don't want to mess up saying their name, because again, I don't know the exact pronunciation. I'll be like Englishing this like a madman. So basically an interview between Renji and Kim and the editor. Basically with this whole part here, it really goes into a lot of stuff. It's like an in-depth interview. Like other interviews from one of the other ones that I reviewed, I think Comickers 2, that one basically has questions kind of like brought up, like question segments. With this, it's an in-depth interview where they talk about a lot of different things and a lot of perspectives on stuff. So I really can't go over and cover the whole thing. It's a matter of just like, it would be better off just reading it for yourself. But it is very interesting just seeing like just the straight up conversation between each person and their perspective on the images, the industry, and their work and stuff as a whole. It's actually very interesting to read. Another thing with this is that, again, it is from like a while ago, 2007 through 2008, because there are some moments where it talks about how do they feel about like Japanese and Korean work being appreciated outside of those areas, and basically them saying it's a new industry and stuff like that. So again, it's definitely a thing where it's from back in the day. Now, this is something where we're like, it's very popular, so that's just the whole thing there. And so far, continuing with the computer graphics part, it goes into another interview with, and I'm going to make sure I have the name up here. Again, I'm going to pronounce just the first name because I might be butchering this still. I think it's Howden. So far, just with that, like, this one is broken down more into the question format. So it's kind of easier to kind of like see what they were talking about a bit better so I can at least talk about it. Basically, they just ask things like, what made you start your career in comic illustration? And what painting material do you use? What is your workflow like? Like, do they use ink when they clean up their artwork? What are their goals for the future? And a lot of other questions as well. Like, the interview does go on for a while. Like, do you have any hobbies? Just a lot of things like that. And so far, again, it is an interesting read as well. There is a lot of pictures and stuff that they have illustrated. And a huge amount of questions. So it goes on for a while. Hopefully I'm just putting all the pictures up of like all the questions and everything and stuff too. But yeah, like again, this whole section does go on for a while, showing different kind of like images that the people have done and really how they feel about doing a variety of stuff. So far, the next part is the gallery, the hot new talent. And basically with this part, it's just a matter of, again, same thing with the other book. It just shows a bunch of pictures from a lot of different artists as well, who I think are like up and coming people. And I'm not going to show all of it because that would be like a lot of like stuff I have to reference and everything later. So But just showing like a lot of it, you can see there's a lot of different pictures from a lot of different people. And again, they're really nice to look at as well. Continuing on to the next part is the story manga. And so far I messed this up in Comickers too. But the story manga in these were comics that were made specifically for this magazine. They weren't like demos, they were just comics made for this magazine. So with this, it's made up of two story mangas, one of them called Spider House, and the other one is Space Orion. Again, so far Spider House is in Japanese, so I can't really read it. I can just show some of the pages of it. It does give like a little description near the end of like what it was about. But again, like if you really can't read it, you can't really appreciate it as much. You can still appreciate the pictures, but just you can't really appreciate the story if you can't read it. And when it comes down to Space Orion, again, has a little description in Japanese, so I can't really read it. And you can basically look through all the pictures of it as well, so you get to see the work from earlier in its entire setting. So again, nice to look at. Does kind of suck that it's not in English for this English version of the book, so you can actually read and appreciate it a bit more, but you get what you can take. And the last part, the gallery, master artist, is basically similar to the second section, where it's basically a bunch of pictures, but these are from people I'm assuming who've been in the industry for a while. So you can basically just kind of like see and look at that and just see a few of the pictures that are there. So far, my final thoughts on this book for the first Comickers book is that, again, it's a very interesting book. It does have a lot of like materials you can like look into for inks, paints, color pencils, things like that. And it does give pretty decent generalized advice for what kind of tools to use or what to really think about when you're getting something. Even the interviews and stuff as well near the end, they're also really good reads and just good to see the perspective on people in the industry of that time and just different people's mindsets. So I would like recommend just reading them. The only thing with the book, if I had to say, is that this book does really hard focus on using paint and water. So like every part is basically saying if you're going to use water and paint, then it will show you how to do stuff. Like with the marker part of it, it was kind of quick and brief where it just kind of introduced it, basically tell you how to take care of your markers, showed you a little bit of tools. Then the sketching part, it was just basically a quick like, here's how to quickly get some stuff down with markers. Use a little bit of the skin work, a little bit of the hair work, a little bit of the eyes. And it didn't really even go through the rest of the picture. It was just like, here's these quick little tips and then move on. But then with the other things such as using the inks or acrylic paints or even the watercolors, it went on for a while with those, showing like how to set up the paper, how to use the water, how to use the ink, what to do for like blending, everything like that. It went on a lot more with stuff involving water rather than like just a basic tool on its own. So that's the only thing I would say is kind of a biased thing with it. It's very obsessed with you're going to use water and or paint. So if you're like looking for other kind of tools such as like color pencil or just using ink on its own with no water, then you might want to try to find something else. But if you're just looking for tools in general, again, this book would be pretty decent to have. So far, what I recommend getting this book, again, if you're a beginner and you know nothing of drawing whatsoever, you might can get this and at least learn about like different techniques to look into and learn how to draw those. So if you're interested in using inks with water or acrylic paints, you basically can like get this, read what's up, and then do research into it and just like slowly get into it. So that's the thing that can definitely help. But if you're somebody who's interested in like using pencils or colored pencils or something like that, you're going to want to go somewhere else. Beyond that, if you're intermediate to advanced, if you're going to work with like paints and water, then yeah, I would say look into this because you can get more perspectives on things like that, see other people's work, their process, how they do things, what material they use. It could be good for them. So again, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. If you're planning on painting, absolutely good to use. Using something else, you might want to use another book for that. And so far, this book right here, which for the Comickers 2 one, I didn't mention this because I didn't notice it. Yeah, this book cost about Yeah, so the first book, it cost $24.99 because I didn't see the price inside the book, and I bought this book for $6.29. Again, I bought it from Thrift Books, so I got it pretty cheap. So if you're looking for the book in store, I have no idea if they still sell it in store, but it'll be around 24 bucks, probably 25 with tax if you're in the US. And if you buy it, used, you'll get it way cheaper. But the thing is, again, it's actually kind of hard to find because I think Thrift Books, I think I bought like the last ones. They might have more, but who knows? It's a thing where you might have to go to eBay or like an old bookstore or something online and just see if you can find it if you're interested. Is it a book you need to get really badly? Again, if you want to work with paints or something, it can be really useful, but it's not something that will just like from nothing teach you how to do this. So it's really just a matter of if you're interested, give it a shot. So that's mostly really it with it. So to myself and everybody else, see you in the next one.